The death knell for the IRS is finally sounding. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick confirmed what millions of Americans have been hoping for. Trump's goal is very simple: to abolish the Internal Revenue Service. This isn't just talk, it's happening. IRS layoffs have already begun, with agents publicly lamenting their job losses on social media. Wait till you see some of these clips we have for you. And Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino, well, he made the administration's position crystal clear with his blunt statement: time to abolish the IRS. The momentum is building rapidly, with polls showing a staggering 86.3% of Americans supporting complete abolition of the tax agency. After decades of harassment and intimidation of ordinary citizens, the IRS faces its own day of reckoning. And as Trump's team dismantles the oppressive IRS, Americans are also dismantling another financial burden: skyrocketing heating costs. Just like the IRS drains your wallet, winter heating bills are set to increase 8.7% this year, costing the average American more than they'll spend on their own Christmas gifts. While the administration works to eliminate the tax burden, this portable heater right here, it helps eliminate the heating burden by cutting your costs dramatically. This revolutionary device instantly warms any space without preheating, using a fraction of the energy of central heating. Just as we're closing the book on the IRS, you can close the door on outrageous utility bills. This mini heater, it delivers customized comfort with built-in overheat protection and adjustable settings. Visit staywarmnow.com for 60% off and free shipping while supplies last. It is linked down below, and we thank our sponsors for making this show possible. Okay, now, before we get to the IRS, which we all are anxiously awaiting its dismantling, this breaking news just a short while ago: Nick Sordor reporting Pam Bondi has announced she will be releasing the flight logs and names and information tomorrow. She said it's very sick what this man did. She says she hasn't released much more detailed information yet because there are well over 200 victims. She just said this on Jesse Waters on Fox. Listen.
You have the Epstein, said last week that you have the Epstein files on your desk. When can we see them, and what's taking so long to release them?
I do. Jesse, there are well over, this will make you sick, 200 victims. 200. So we have well over 250 actually. So we have to make sure that their identity is protected and their personal information. But other than that, I think tomorrow, the personal information of victims. Other than that, I think tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah, what you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Okay, well,
along with his co-defendant.
Absolutely, and he had help. That's for sure.
Wow, buckle up. The bomb drops tomorrow. And speaking of bombs dropping, the IRS, Nick Sordor also posting this. The IRS will now be closing over 120 offices nationwide, in addition to laying off thousands of employees, according to the Washington Post. This comes after we, the people, overwhelmingly voted for DOJ to audit the IRS, and apparently they are moving quickly. Here we go. Now, I want to get into some of the nuances of the income tax, but yes, all roads lead to Ron Paul. Ron Paul woke me up in 2008. He was right, and it's happening. The IRS is going away. Back in 2008, when Ron Paul was running and debating people, this person says, I did have a thought. I think Ron Paul was the beta test to see what the media would do. He was the only candidate talking about the Federal Reserve and the IRS. They destroyed him. Now, fast forward to Donald Trump. Here we have this. IRS is expected to lay off thousands. This was from February 14th. According to the New York Times, President Trump said the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at just like everybody else. IRS, here's the headline, expected to lay off thousands per the New York Times. And here's Trump.
Mr. Mr. President, Doge workers arrived today, Gavin Clagger and others arrived today at the IRS. Do you expect to close the IRS, or what are you expecting?
No, I don't expect it, but I think that the Internal Revenue Service will be looked at like everybody else. Just about everybody's going to be looked at. So it's they're doing a hell of a job. It's an amazing job they're doing. And, you know, that force is building. I call it the force of super geniuses, but it's building. And, you know, they go up and they talk to some of the people about certain deals, and the people get all tongue-tied. They can't talk because these people get it. They're very smart people. We need smart people. Yes.
Smart people are finally back in the White House. This was posted 48 hours ago. I wish I could like this 1,000 times, says Wall Street Apes. IRS worker documents her journey going in and being terminated from the IRS. Check this out.
Makes me a probationary employee. Good morning. Come with me to the IRS as a federal employee who is about to get fired. So last night I got the call to bring my equipment in today, even though today is not an in-person day for me. I have been working at the IRS for about 7 months, so that makes me a probationary employee. So I was able to badge into our parking garage. I was a little worried I'm a little bit late because of the ice. It's -8 degrees in Missouri. I can't record while I'm inside, but I have all my belongings packed up. So I'll let you know what happens when I'm done. So it is 2:15. I am just leaving the IRS for the last time in my indefinite future. All right, I'm home in my driveway. I'm no longer employed. Do not have my badge anymore.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. When I say tax cuts, I don't mean fiddle with the code. I mean abolish the income tax and the IRS and replace them with nothing. The great Ron Paul. Here we have, this is Trump serious about abolishing the IRS and the income tax in the United States. Meanwhile, Canadians are getting taxed to death for immigrants that have destroyed a system they never paid into. Seems our not-free healthcare is only free to newcomers.
Side of the reductions that markets are.
Trump has said that he wants to abolish the IRS and replace the revenue with money the country will earn from tariffs, something the National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett confirmed is the plan moving forward.
The China tariff revenue that we're estimating is coming in from the 10% that we just added, plus the de minimis thing, that it's between $500 billion and $1 trillion over 10 years is our estimate. And that's something that is outside of the reductions that markets are seeing through the negotiations up on the Hill. And so we expect that the tariff revenue is actually going to make it much easier for Republicans to pass a bill, and that was the president's plan all along.
Trump has said that he wants to...
Yeah, baby, that was the president's plan all along. Here we have another one. 24 hours ago, Eric Doherty posting this. A laid off IRS agent crying.
I just want my job back. I just want to go to work. I just want to work. I want my job back. I want the unions to fight. I want the legislation to be reversed. Let us work. Let us do what they employed us to do, what we took our oath to do. I just want my job.
Yeah, well, guess what? Can we lay off the rest of the IRS? Here we have more. Trump's deputy chief of staff. This is the post that set it all off today. DC Drano, Trump's deputy chief of staff, has called for abolishing the IRS. It's happening, y'all. Dan Scavino Jr., time to abolish the IRS. Being libertarian, abolish the IRS, repurpose the buildings as Ron Paul Institute of Peace and Prosperity Learning Centers. Oh, I love it. Yes, yes, yes. Abolish the IRS. MJ Truth Ultra, Dan Scavino says it's time to abolish the IRS. Can we hurry up and do it before the tax deadline? We all know where this is going. It will be abolished, and essentially the funding of our own destruction will end. All glory to God. It is happening. Now, check this out. This is Grant Cardone. He posted this just 48 hours ago. IRS equals parasites on the American people. And he was talking with Laura Ingraham.
I think,
Grant, they are so upset about these cuts. Why are they so worried?
well, because they're thieves. These are parasites on the American people. It's a Ponzi scheme. They collect $5 trillion. I think the American people don't understand the IRS and what they actually do. They collect $5 trillion a year from American people, mostly not corporations, American people, regular middle-class people. Those super wealthy have figured out how to get by it. 50% of that money is from income taxes, okay? It's taken literally, $2.5 trillion away from the American people. $1.8 trillion comes from withholding. And then 10%, Laura, listen to this, 10% are penalties. $500 billion a year the American people are charged by the IRS for penalties alone. We should get rid of the IRS. We should go to a zero tax. First of all, audit the IRS and you will get rid of them because the amount of fraud there is unbelievable. We should go to a zero tax, and then when the American people, for some situation, whether it's the military or whatever, needs money, we print money. Right now we do both. We print and we tax. We should do one or the other, and I would say print and make sure the American people are behind it. Otherwise, don't tax the American people.
Well, you could actually, it turns out, you could get a Doge check with all this savings sometime soon. Watch.
Elon Musk is proposing potentially giving money to Americans based on what Doge is finding. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I love it. A 20% dividend, so to speak, for the money that we're saving by going after the waste and fraud and abuse.
How much money do you think?
Could be a lot. I mean, if it's 20%, we'd give back a lot of money to the taxpayer.
Well, Grant, this is the people's money, so calling it a Doge dividend is kind of fun, but it's their money. It's our money.
Well, what's crazy is that the withholding, for instance, everybody gets withheld for 26 weeks of the year if you're getting paid every 2 weeks. They say the reason they do the withholding is for the convenience of the American people. And then one of the people that you were talking about in the video, they said it makes it easier for people to budget. It's a convenience. I'm like, I'm not getting a refund. If you get rid of 7,000 IRS people and they can't process my refund, by the way, that was not a refund. That was money I should have never paid. I was overpaid to the IRS. If that money alone stayed with the American people, it would be $81 billion a year that I could earn by having money at the bank rather than sitting with the IRS and maybe going to Ukraine.
It's criminal. It's criminal that we spend $1 trillion a year on interest on our debt. It's criminal that we spent trillions of dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it really is criminal. It's stealing from the American people and our children and our grandchildren. And speaking of stealing, Grant, what about Fort Knox? Do you think that gold's all in there? A few gold bars missing, maybe?
One or two things are going to happen. Either they're going to find nothing in there, and that's going to be a disaster, or they're going to find too much gold in there. Because maybe go back a couple of years and maybe they've been packing some gold in there from other countries. Neither one is explainable, but the American people deserve to know what the truth is, and the American people can handle the truth. Let's get down to it and stop the nonsense of these Ponzi schemes and parasites.
Do you think there should be any tax, flat tax, fair tax, sales
I think there should be no income tax, no death or inheritance tax, no gift tax. There should be no income tax at all. No payroll withholding. The way to do it is to go to a flat tax. People would pay 20 to 25% on a purchase.
That's it.
That's when it would be collected. And if a local state or county wants to add a property tax, let them do that. It shouldn't be the federal government.
Yeah, how about no tax at all? How about no tax at all? My goodness. Here we have Donald Trump daily polls. Should the IRS be abolished? 86% of respondents said double thumbs up. 7% said double thumbs down. That was 16,000 votes. Of course, I gave it the double thumbs up. And here we have Howard Lutnick. Okay, this is when he was on with Jesse Waters. And following this, the assistant to President Trump, Dan Scavino, calls for abolishing the IRS. Time to abolish it. And this is the message that was transmitted from the Commerce Secretary just a week ago.
If you get savings from these Doge cuts, are you going to give any of this back to the American people? We keep hearing about these Doge dividends.
Well, think about it. Donald Trump announces the External Revenue Service, and his goal is very simple. His goal is to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and let all the outsiders pay. I mean, this is someone who is focused on America. Let's drive down our waste, fraud, and abuse. I'll give you an example. Cruise ships. You ever see a cruise ship with an American flag on the back? They have flags of like Liberia or Panama. None of them pay taxes. None of them pay taxes. Every super tanker, none pays taxes. Alcohol, all foreign alcohol, no taxes. This is going to end under Donald Trump, and those taxes are going to be paid, and Americans' tax rates are going to come down. That's what Donald Trump wants to do. Balance our budget and cut our taxes. I mean, imagine a Democratic senator going against that. What planet are these people on?
Yeah, exactly. What planet are they on? Think about it. Trump announces the External Revenue Service. His goal is very simple. Check this out. Trump's goal is to abolish the IRS as layoffs loom. Buckle up, folks. It is all happening. The end of the IRS finally. Let's go back to this flashback moment on Inauguration Day.
And we defended. At the start of the 20th century, America was the richest country on earth. And we defended our workers from unfair trade policies with tariffs. And we only made money. We had no income tax. All we did is charge other countries and foreign companies, if they wanted to sell to America, you had to pay for entry. Okay, so imagine this. The U.S. government had no income tax. Americans got to keep all their hard-earned money, and foreigners paid the price. So now, what's happened? We have the Internal Revenue Service. That means charge us internally. Now imagine politicians who can't even balance their own checkbook, taking our money, and what do they do every year? Let's just take more, let's just take more, let's just take more. So this is how Donald Trump is going to end it and fix it. Last week, he announced that we're going to return America to greatness by creating, and today is its birthday, the External Revenue Service. So if you're always wondering, is some bureaucrat going to cut your benefits? Not under Donald Trump. Not under Donald Trump. It means foreign companies are going to pay if they want to come and sell products to the wealthiest country on earth. And if they want to compete with American workers, then let's just not tax our American workers.
It's about time. It is about time. Abolish the income tax and the IRS. I want this guy says, Latina BCP, I want every single dollar paid in taxes back with interest. American taxpayer money has been embezzled, stolen, laundered for decades. Fire every single IRS employee. Don't give an F about IRS employees who have terrorized Americans. Abolish the tax code. 16th Amendment, IRS making taxing income, inheritance, wealth, assets, property, along with VATs, excise, imposts, and tariffs illegal at all levels of government. Only a simple sales tax should be allowed at any level of government. I don't think that. No, maybe at the local level. Ultimately, all politicians except Ron Paul are criminals in that they continue to allow theft through income tax, property tax. Abolish the income tax and replace them with nothing. Ron Paul. Speaking of Ron Paul, remember when he said this?
The federal. Your answer is to cut both taxes and spending. You say that you would eliminate the IRS, the CIA, the Federal Reserve, the Department of Homeland Security, Medicare. I know that you used to want to end the FBI. I'm not sure whether you still support that idea, sir. Perhaps you can tell us. But if you get rid of the CIA, let alone the FBI, how would President Paul have any idea, any intelligence of what our enemies, foreign and domestic, are up to?
Well, you might ask a better question. Before 9/11, we were spending $40 billion a year. And the FBI was producing numerous information about people being trained on airplanes to fly them but not land them. And they totally ignored them. So it's the inefficiency of the bureaucracy that is the problem. So increasing this with the Department of Homeland Security and spending more money doesn't solve the problem. Yes, we have every right in the world to know something about intelligence gathering, but we have to have intelligent people interpreting this information. But, you know, just going for increasing presidential powers, as been discussed, is rather disturbing to me. This whole idea that we're supposed to sacrifice liberty for security, we were advised against that. Don't we remember that when you sacrifice liberty for security, you lose both? That's what's happening in this country today. We have a national ID card on our doorsteps. It's being implemented right now. We have FISA courts. We have warrantless searches. We've lost habeas corpus. We've had secret prisons around the world, and we have torture going on. That's un-American, and we need to use the power of the presidency to get it back in order to take care of us and protect this country and our liberties.
Thank you, Congress.
You heard them laughing. They were laughing at Ron Paul. No one's laughing now. Donald Trump taking the message of Ron Paul into this administration, not just with Doge and cutting all the federal spending, that's just complete waste, but I mean, as far as the IRS and the Federal Reserve auditing Fort Knox, I thought this was cute here. Me waiting for the IRS to be abolished as April 15th keeps getting closer. You gotta love it, right? Check this out. This is another meme. Rand Paul endorsed Trump and Ron Paul is working with Musk. The IRS is finished for nearly every terrible thing we have done over the last 30 years. You can find a video of one of these men trying to stop it. And I am so happy that I have supported these guys over all these years. Okay, so check this out. Here is this woman talking about, let's see.
To delay everybody. So Doge entered the IRS yesterday, and apparently not everybody is happy about this. Obviously, there is one very large group of people that are like, yeah, this is exactly what we wanted. This is what we voted for. And then, of course, the media, who does not tell the truth or represent actual Americans in any way, shape, or form, is touting the narrative that this is a bad thing because it's going to delay everybody receiving their tax returns. First of all, only 56% of Americans pay federal taxes. That's right, 44% of people don't even have to worry about this. And secondly, of that 56%, a very large chunk of those people have to pay in every year. All of the entrepreneurs in this country, the plumbers, the electricians, the concrete guys, the contractors, the trailer salesmen, all the business owners have to pay in every year because they don't have somebody sitting there taking a bunch of money out of their check and shoving it at the government because they need that money to operate every month. People that are getting returns, the reason you're getting a return is because you just gave your money to the government to use for free with zero interest for a year. Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? When has the government ever done that for you? Any loan you get from the federal government has interest. So why are you giving the federal government a loan interest-free? So whether you're left or right on this, it doesn't really matter. I just want to point out that the left claims to be the party of the working people. The working people have to pay in. We don't care if this is going to delay the whole tax system. We don't care. We don't want to pay in as it is. Every year we are socked with a higher percentage rate and more bullshit taxes that we have to pay in. As business owners, we're sitting here trying to get insurance off the marketplace and turning around every other day getting a letter from Uncle Sam that says we might not be getting the right tax credit based off of our income. So we might have to pay more come tax season next year. So if you're crying about the fact that this might delay tax returns, you should probably reassess what it is you actually stand for. Because I promise you, the average hardworking American doesn't give a fuck about your inability to get your tax return. On this note, do we think Elon will shut down the IRS before April 15th, or do I actually need to start getting a payment ready?
That's the question a lot of people are asking right now. Okay, so we need to dig into the IRS right now. Check this out. Here's my man. This is Aaron Russo. He was my mentor. I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for him. He made a film called America, Freedom to Fascism that directly combated the IRS and the Federal Reserve, the Real ID, the police state, everything. Here he is. This was his interview that he did after the film was released with Alex.
But you're saying go ahead and pay. You've made America Freedom to Fascism. I want to walk through that film, and I want to encourage everybody out there to get a copy of it on DVD. It was also in theaters around the country, and I think the best film out there on the Federal Reserve and the IRS and the whole banker scam, and I want to discuss that with you here. But I wanted to go back a little bit to the point that we discussed last night, where you don't advise people to not pay. And I do the same thing. People say, well, wait, you're saying it's a scam, but you're saying go ahead and pay it. And I like the way you summed it up.
Well, it's really fairly simple. I mean, since making that movie, you know, many people come to me and ask me whether they should pay their income taxes or not, you know, and I never advise people not to pay. And the reason I tell them, I said, look, I've done a lot of research. The Supreme Court has ruled that the IRS has no authority. The 16th Amendment did not give the IRS the authority to tax your labor and your wages. That's a fact. All right, the Supreme Court is the law of the land, you know, and the IRS does not trump the Supreme Court. However, that being the case, the fact is, if the mafia would come to you and say, we want $2,000 a month and we're going to hurt you, I would not advise you not to pay them, because you may get hurt by not paying them. Whether it's legal or not doesn't necessarily matter. You're going to get hurt if you don't. It's the same thing with the IRS. They can hurt you. They can put you in jail. They can torture you. So if you don't pay them, you may get hurt. So I never advise people not to pay. You know, I tell people, yeah, pay your taxes.
Look what happened to Congressman Hansen.
Yeah, Congressman Hansen's a great example. Pay your taxes. But you know what? Shut down the Federal Reserve System, and eventually you won't have to pay those taxes anymore. See, the IRS is a symptom of the problem. The real problem is the banking industry and the bankers in this country. That's where the real problem lies. That's the root of our problem. That's why we've lost America, okay? So, yeah, pay your taxes, because if you don't pay them, you might get hurt. And I've heard all the arguments, you know, what tax protesters say and so on and so forth. And I don't call them tax protesters. I call them the tax honesty movement, because they're being honest, you know, at least. But the fact of the matter is, you're being forced, you're being compelled to pay it because you've made America free.
Oh, man. The fact that we are seeing, like, the dream of Aaron Russo and Ron Paul coming to fruition right now, I mean, it's amazing. Here we have, this is a great summary of the income tax. Now, this is Sherry Jackson. We've got another clip from Sherry Jackson. Also, she was a former IRS agent, and she was penalized because of what she did. I got this other clip here from Aaron. This was post Freedom to Fascism. I think we'll play this one here.
Okay. There's two.
What's a piece of information that you learned that feels illegal to know?
There is no law that requires you to file a 1040. I researched this, and I'll tell you why there's no law. First of all, the Constitution says, okay, that there's two kinds of taxation: direct taxes and indirect taxes. A direct tax must be apportioned and done by census, which means that a direct tax, which is what a tax on your labor would be a direct tax, you can't get away from it, right? A direct tax on your labor would have to be apportioned, meaning divided amongst all the people equally, right? Mm-hmm. And an indirect tax is like an excise tax. It's like a tax that you don't have to pay if you don't use the service.
Luxury car or something.
Well, not even a luxury car can't labor, but like gasoline. Right. If you don't want to drive a car, if you want to take a bicycle, mm-hmm. you don't buy gas, you don't pay the tax. Right. So that's called an indirect tax. But that indirect tax has to be the same in every state. Mm-hmm. It has to be uniform, okay? So there's two kinds of taxes, direct and indirect, in the Constitution. In 1894, they tried to pass an income tax on your labor. The Supreme Court said you can't do that. It's unconstitutional, and they stopped. In 1913, to get around that Pollock decision of 1894, right, they passed the 16th Amendment, which said we can tax any income from any place forever, okay? And once they passed that tax, then people started paying an income tax on the labor. It became a third form of taxation. Mm-hmm. You had direct apportioned tax, you had the indirect tax, and now you had a direct tax that was unapportioned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you had 3 forms of taxation now. But, 2 things. The amendment was never ratified properly. It was a fraud, okay? And that's been proven. But the second point is this, even if it wasn't a fraud and had been ratified properly, even if it had been, okay, the Supreme Court in 8 different decisions that I have researched said the 16th Amendment gave the government no new power of taxation. They can't tax the labor of the American people, so it was finished. And in 1917, they stopped taxing it, so they did it for 3 years, right? And so there is no tax on the labor of the American people, no legal tax, and no constitutional tax. So they've made the IRS code, right, says whatever it says, but whatever it says is irrelevant because it's not in compliance with
legal.
the Supreme Court decisions.
Right.
Right? And even the IRS code, if you actually examine it, okay, even though it's irrelevant because it doesn't comply with the Supreme Court, actually, if you examine it, there's still no law that makes you pay a tax on your labor.
Right,
Okay?
yet every one of us, I guess there are, 69, 70 million Americans who don't, but most of the rest of us are on the treadmill and we're paying dutifully our taxes on time each year.
Well, they make you feel if you don't pay it, you're not a good citizen. That's part of their propaganda.
Well,
And that's what allows them to keep spending money.
but in fact, it's not just you saying this. What I found very compelling in your film is that you're talking with former IRS agents and investigators who were put to the task of finding out on behalf of inquiries as to whether or not this was a legal practice,
right,
only to find out that it wasn't legal. And in fact, some of these people who were formerly with the IRS have not paid their taxes since they found out about this.
Right.
Now,
There are many IRS agents, former agents, who have left the IRS because they did the research, and they were in there before I was.
Right.
You know, and they deserve to be honored for the work they've done because it's a giant, in my opinion, it's a giant scam.
And the scam is about to come to an end. I need to give Joe Bannister a call. For real. Okay. Okay, I don't know which one I should go to next here. Okay, this is former IRS agent Sherry Peel Jackson from Aaron Russo's documentary Freedom to Fascism, breaks down the truth about the IRS and the income tax system. This is a former IRS agent, direct from her own mouth. Listen.
Basically, the income tax doesn't apply to us. And even though I heard that from 1995 to 2000, it was just in the back of my head, oh, there are some people out there that think that the income tax is being misrepresented and misapplied. But in 2000, We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put out a full-page ad in the USA Today, and it said, "Dear We the People, basically the income tax is a fraud," and it was going into detail about the income tax not applying to most Americans that live and work in the 50 states. And there were 2 things in the body of that article. Number one, Joe Bannister had written a report that turned into a book. And he was a IRS Criminal Investigation Division agent out in California that did the research on his own time and couldn't find the law. So he basically gave this report to his superiors and they didn't answer. They just sent him back a note saying that, we're not going to answer this and you have, a week or so to tender your resignation. And he resigned. So I wanted a copy of that report. And number 2, William Conklin had a $50,000 challenge for anybody that would prove that the income tax applied to us, that we have to file or we have to pay. And since I had my codes and regulations from the IRS, I wanted that $50,000, Tim. So I started doing some serious research, and then all of these things, I went down that rabbit hole. And, really, the rabbit hole is still there. I still haven't found a law that requires most Americans that live and work in the 50 states to file an income tax return or pay an income tax. But we both know that big mouth people like me, or even high income people that don't file that tax return, either they get their stuff taken or seized, or houses, liens and levies, or like me, since I was my mouth was too big and I was given too much logic about the whole thing, they charged me with a misdemeanor, and the misdemeanor is willful failure to file, which is true. I didn't file the tax return. But what they did, the dastardly people, they gave me 4 years on a misdemeanor. So misdemeanor definition is 1 year. What they did was they stacked 4 one-year sentences together because there were 4 years that they selected that I made over 6 figures. And they kept telling the jury, she made $100 and something $1,000 this year, and she made $100 and something $1,000 this year, and she didn't file. And, had them, would not let me explain to the jury what was going on and the fact that I didn't find the law, because Joe Bannister had already been tried before me and he won his case. So they knew.
Okay, so can we clarify something here? This guy, Joe Bannister, who's had his case, I've had a lot of people tell me, oh yeah, people will say this. Oh, they'll do that. Oh, they say that there's no law and this, that, and the other. And they may win a court case, but they're still responsible for paying those things. Well, if you win the court case, doesn't that indicate you don't have to pay it if you're against that? What's going on there?
No. So they parrot all the cases that they win, and then they isolate the cases that they don't win. So all of the people that I know that were charged with willful failure to file or something similar, when they won their cases, the IRS still came after them civilly. So they went after them criminally to try to make a statement. And then when they lost, they went after them criminally. So I'll give you an example. Joe Bannister won his case. The IRS was so angry that they went to the California Board of Accountancy and told them to take Joe's CPA license. And they did. Joe won his case, but he got his CPA license taken. Bernie Kugelin was the Federal Express pilot that won her case because they looked at the law that the jury basically found her not guilty. The IRS automatically slapped her with a whole bunch of taxes on the civil side. And when she refused to pay, they came, raided her house, and took everything out. And I was on the phone with her shortly after that happened, and she said that after they took everything out of the house, they took her vacuum cleaner, vacuumed her house, and took it.
Wow. That's just criminal activity. I don't care if they do it under the guise of government or not. That's criminal activity. And, biblically speaking, we go to our foundations. The Bible talked about
income tax, doesn't it?
Sherry Jackson right there detailing the brutality. Now here is a quick trailer from Freedom to Fascism.
The research based. There is no law. And to date, nobody has been able to show that there is a law for the average American citizen working day in and day out to pay an income tax.
But We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education put a full-page ad in the USA Today on July 7th, 2000. And within the body of that ad was a $50,000 challenge for anyone that could show the law. And to me, $50,000 is a lot of money. So I went after that and did the research based on the fact that I thought, let's put this baby to bed. I'm hearing all these rumors. I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'll answer these people's questions that are asking me, and then I'll win this $50,000. And, based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress. We've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
There is no law. There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct, unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation for services. There is no law.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. Maybe I don't know what it is right then as he was speaking to me, but sure. So naively, I agreed to go off and research it and get back to him. 3.5 months later, I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know. And I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
I had to leave the IRS because I presented evidence that I had accumulated indicating that the agency was violating the law and violating people's rights. And I asked the agency for a response to my sincere concerns. And the answer I got was that they would not respond to my concerns and that they would provide me with the paperwork necessary to tender my resignation.
You can look through the statutes and look for the law that requires you to pay. And when you do that, you can't identify a law that requires the average person in America who earns a wage and works in private business to pay an income tax.
American citizens, along with the foundation, have been asking the IRS to specifically provide them with the underlying legal foundation upon which they administer and enforce the personal income tax laws in our country.
At the national level, when people would attempt to contact somebody of a much higher authority, say the commissioner, same kind of thing. They would get answers that were in effect non-answers.
You have to understand that an agency which will unlawfully impose a tax that doesn't exist is not going to care. If we, the people, don't know what our rights are, they're not going to tell us.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt. All individual income tax revenues are gone before 1 nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government. People have been told, that you need this income tax system to fund government, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, my question is, well, if that's true, how did we fund government from 1776 to 1913?
The main purpose of the income tax is not to raise revenue, but to redistribute wealth and to control society.
A lot of people might say, well, gee, if there wasn't an income tax, what would happen to education? They don't understand that education is paid for the most part, out of state and local taxes, your property tax. People might say, well, how are we going to build and maintain our highways? If there's no money coming into the government, we need our highways. There is a tax on every gallon of gasoline that people buy. Proceeds from the income tax do not pay for highway construction.
I believe that in both spirit and substance, our tax system has come to be un-American. Death and taxes may be inevitable, but unjust taxes are not.
This small booklet includes the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. This is a document that every citizen should read. It's a document which freed an entire nation. This is the Internal Revenue Code, and this document, and the unlawful application of this document by the Internal Revenue Service has enslaved the nation that this document attempted to free.
There is no law, and to date...
Oh, man. We're here, folks. All the hard work, Ron Paul, Aaron Russo, all the advocates in the tax honesty movement. Finally, we are seeing those seeds take root. In the IRS abolishment plan, it represents the most significant tax reform in American history. For too long, this agency has operated with virtually unlimited power to terrorize ordinary citizens. As you saw, one plumber on social media expressed the frustration of millions when they stated they pay $30,000 in taxes every year. I want the IRS abolished. It's illegal. It's corrupt. The groundswell of public support for ending the IRS suggests Americans have reached their breaking point with government overreach. Even Ron Paul, who warned about the IRS for decades, is finally seeing his predictions come true. And as this plan accelerates, Americans should consider, if the federal government managed to function for over half our nation's history without the income tax, why can't we do it again? Comment below. And celebrate the coming of the end of the IRS with your next news swag, because we've been fighting this fight for a long, long time. It's linked down below. Show your support.